Welcome to the darkest chapter of human history. Today, we take a journey back in time to witness the horrors of the Nazi concentration camps, a place where innocent lives were taken, freedom was stripped away, and humanity was lost. This is a day in the worst of these camps, where we will uncover the atrocities that took place and pay homage to those who suffered. Join us as we delve into a world of terror and tragedy, and remember the lessons that must never be forgotten. And before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, Uncovering Mythology and History. KL Auschwitz was the largest Nazi concentration and extermination camp in Germany. Over 1.1 million men, women, and children died there. When the Allied powers arrived at the Auschwitz camps on January 27, 1945, they discovered a horrific situation of mass execution, the likes of which our world has never experienced before. After Germany's conquest of Poland, they transformed Auschwitz I into a prison camp. But the true horror began with the construction of Auschwitz II, Birkenau, where 1.1 million innocent lives were brutally taken and their bodies destroyed. The world was shocked by the staggering numbers of fatalities, but the true horror was yet to be revealed by the brave survivors who dared to speak out about the heinous crimes committed at this infamous site. When Hitler served as Germany's chancellor from 1933 to 1945, he would carry out a plan of mass execution that had been advocated by numerous right-wing extremists prior to him. And the Nazi ideology's policy became known as the final solution to the Jewish problem. Prior to the outbreak of World War II, Germany already had several prison camps that served as detention facilities for Jews, political dissidents, and other enemies of the Nazi regime. But these were only hints at what was going to come, not the entire picture. As the Nazis invaded Poland, detention centers were established in Polish military barracks. The famous Rudolf Hess supervised the establishment of the first camp and served as its first commandant. Auschwitz was most likely chosen due to its location, as it was located at the intersection of 44 sections of track or railway lines that could effortlessly be used to transport prisoners of war. Rudolf Hess was in charge of building a facility that was meant to dispose of the bodies of those who had been executed or had died. But by May 1942, a chilling discovery was made. 3 ovens capable of burning 340 bodies in just 24 hours were being used to kill prisoners who were still alive. In this sense, the crematoriums would evolve into a symbol of the Nazi regime's viciousness and disregard for human beings. The Nazis would continue to build chambers like these, 5 in total. In March 1941, Himmler visited the camp and ordered it to be expanded to accommodate more prisoners. This led to the creation of Auschwitz II, Birkenau, located near the original camp. Completed in October 1941, Birkenau was a massive upgrade to the first camp, which could only hold 15,000 prisoners. With its expanded capacity of over 90,000, Birkenau became the site of some of the worst atrocities in human history. With a staggering number of prisoners, it's clear that the Nazi regime was just getting started. Nearly 1.1 million of the 1.3 million prisoners were Jews, with the remaining 200,000 being made up of non-Jewish Poles, Roma, Gypsies, homosexuals, Soviet prisoners of war, and individuals with mental disabilities. The scale of the tragedy is almost impossible to grasp, and the level of brutal execution and torture inflicted on these prisoners is beyond comprehension. The aftermath of Auschwitz was a haunting reminder of the atrocities committed there. When the Soviet Red Army arrived, they were met with a sea of shoes left behind by the victims. This powerful image serves as a testament to the Nazi regime's cruelty, where human life was worth nothing. The prisoners arrived at Auschwitz packed into cattle carriages in deplorable conditions, only to be faced with even greater terror. Upon arrival, they were given triangular pieces of clothing with their inmate number stitched above it. By July 1942, the majority of those sent to Auschwitz were of Jewish descent. Nazi doctors would assess these victims, and those deemed unsuitable for employment or duty were instantly sent to take a bath in public restrooms. These were, however, lethal showers, and these restrooms were basically camouflaged gas chambers. As this was simply a means of reducing the number of unfit prisoners, this would consist of small kids, older couples, pregnant women, or the physically or mentally sick and disabled. When they entered the gas chambers, the unfit inmates would be subjected to Zyklon B, a lethal poisonous gas. The most tragic aspect of this entire segment is that these inmates have never been required to register in the Nazi dataset, which makes it impossible to determine the true severity of horrendous atrocities being committed against the vulnerable and elderly. Political prisoners wore a red triangle stitched into their shirts, while German perpetrators wore a green triangle. Prostitutes, gypsies, and Roma were dressed in black, while homosexuals would dress in pink. Jews would be forced to wear a yellow badge in the shape of the Star of David, allowing prisoners to be divided into various groups. A letter sewn into a specific inmate's attire also suggested their nationality. With German prisoners, institutional racism started to develop as a result of this distinctiveness. Non-Jewish inmates from various countries would be placed at the top, with Jewish prisoners at the bottom. Those who survived the initial gas chambers were enslaved to the point where many died from exhaustion, illnesses, and a lack of nutrition, and many more perished in the daily battle that really was life in Auschwitz. The prisoners of Auschwitz were subjected to grueling daily routines that began before the crack of dawn, at 4:30 a.m. for the men and even earlier for the women. The sound of the block superintendent ringing a gong signaled the start of their day. This gong marked the beginning of their daily employment and enslavement, a never-ending cycle of physical and mental exhaustion. The daily routine at Auschwitz was brutal and inhumane. The block superintendent would walk around using a stick to beat the prisoners and force them to use the toilet as quickly as possible. The unsanitary conditions in the camp led to widespread illness and disease. To keep the prisoners working, they were given a meager 500 milligrams of a coffee substitute for breakfast. After the first gong, a second one would signal the prisoners to gather outside and form neat rows of 10 for counting. The prisoners would be made to stand outside for extended periods until the SS officers arrived to conduct the head count. Only after the recount was complete and every inmate accounted for did the grueling workday begin. The Nazi regime controlled every aspect of the prisoners' lives, including their breaks and personal time. Even toilet breaks were documented and monitored. The lunch served at noon was a watery soup that was often contaminated and unsanitary. Dinner was 300 grams of moldy bread that was inedible. After a long day of grueling labor, there was a second roll call where physical punishment such as whippings and hangings were common for even the slightest infractions. The prisoners lived in constant fear, and if one went missing, the others would be forced to stand in the head count until the disappeared inmate was found, leading to even longer and more arduous days. The prisoners, exhausted from the grueling labor and brutal treatment by the Nazi officers, would look forward to reading letters from their loved ones at night. However, Jewish prisoners were denied this basic comfort and were kept in the dark about their families' well-being. Many were forced to sleep in cramped, unsanitary conditions in wooden or brick cellars. The night was filled with terror as the notorious Dr. Joseph Mengele, known as the Angel of Death, conducted his inhumane experiments on Jewish prisoners, including infants. The horrors of the night were only temporarily silenced by the ringing of the curfew gong, but they continued to haunt the prisoners. When the Soviet Red Army finally reached Auschwitz in 1945, they found approximately 7,800 sick prisoners, and 60,000 prisoners were forced to embark on a deadly death march where many perished. The atrocities of Auschwitz will forever be remembered as one of the darkest moments in human history. The inhumane treatment and horrific conditions that the prisoners were subjected to are beyond comprehension. It is a reminder of the importance of standing up against hate and oppression, and to never forget the sacrifices made by those who suffered and lost their lives in this tragedy. Let us honor their memory by spreading love, compassion, and peace in the world. Please leave any comments or suggestions for future videos in the comments section below. Thanks for watching.